In this video, I'm going to teach you about the deadlift fundamentals that I teach. I'm going to talk about the 3 Bs. I'm going to give you a bonus on strap technique. And also, I'm going to cover 2 errors that are the most common things that I see where people go wrong. First of all, let's talk about the first B. Prioritize in learning in this order. So prioritize bar path. And what I mean by optimal bar path is moving the weight from the floor to lockout in a perfectly straight line as a non-negotiable. Perfectly straight line, perfectly straight line. I cannot stress that enough. So for most people, this straight line will mean that the bar is coming ever so slightly back towards the hip. So it starts ever so slightly in front of the shin, around mid-foot, and it comes to meet the hip to lock out, or the hip comes to meet the bar. This should be a perfectly straight line, and it should be relatively shallow back towards the hip. If you find that you're slightly more inflexible, or you struggle to get into a good start position, you might find that it's worth starting with the weight a little bit further in front, which optimizes your leg drive and your strengths. But the principle of the bar path should remain the same, of being a perfectly straight line. The only thing that may change is the fact that the line may appear to come back at a larger angle towards you. Deadlift fundamentals, the 3 Bs. The second B that I teach is the back position. So back position, I recommend keeping the back position fixed throughout the lift. So talking in the context of strongman, I assume that most people are going to be competing, and they're going to do whatever it takes to lift that weight. And that's why the recommendations for the deadlift will be significantly different between making for the safest outcome between a general population client learning to deadlift to just generally get stronger, versus a strongman who's already competing, who is going to do whatever it takes to lift the deadlift from A to B in the competition. And you just wants to make this as safe and effective as possible. So in this second scenario for the strongman, I would recommend definitely finding a position where you can keep the back rigid. And what I mean by this is you find the position that's based on your body mechanics, your anthropometry, your muscle balances, your strengths, your weaknesses, that enables you to maintain the same back rigidity and the same torso stiffness at the same point when the bar is a millimeter off the floor to it is as lockout, i.e. we don't want to see the torso change in shape or change in structure as you initiate the lift and throughout the lift. Deadlift fundamental 3, bracing. So once you've established a perfect bar path and found the most efficient line that works for you, that you can be consistent with, and then you've established that you've found a position that where you can maintain your torso rigidity and your back rigidity throughout the lift, and your back angle remains constant, whether it's in the start position or whether it's in the finish position, whether that be slightly flexed, slightly extended, it's fixed. So the third thing would be adding a brace on top of this position and creating even further rigidity and stiffness. You may do this supplementing with a belt, which I would highly recommend for the performance enhancement of producing more force globally, which is going to enable you to lift more weight. So enhancing the brace on top of this position. So what we want to make sure that you're doing is maximizing the brace whilst reinforcing the positions that we've talked about in the first 2 Bs. So a little error that people can make is putting the belt on, and sometimes putting the belt too tight, or in a position that alters the positioning somewhat in the start position. And that's why some people will find the error of they'll put a belt on and it throws them out of position and it doesn't feel quite as good. So I would recommend in learning how to use a belt which will reinforce the bracing and in terms of skill. And what I would recommend is learning how to get this tighter over time. A lot of people make the error of thinking that tighter is better. You want to you want to prioritize the skill of you want it as tight as the belt as tight as possible whilst maintaining the exact same positioning that you've optimized without a belt. So at first, it may be beneficial to really build up the tightness of the belt and how much you crank it up, and then over time, as you know that you're not compromising that start position, go a little bit tighter as you go along. So I'll show you an example of bar path here. So the 3Bs are demonstrated here. So I'm using this as an example. This is an example of me deadlifting. And you can see that the bar path is perfectly straight all the way through. It's going in a perfectly straight line from the floor to lockout. So another thing that I talked about on the bar path is you can see that actually it's starting just a little bit in front of midfoot, and then to meet as the hips meet the bar, the hip lockout position is slightly behind midfoot, and therefore the bar travels slightly back towards me. So the back position here, if we look at the second B, you look at the back position. I've purposely picked this video because you can see that I'm ever so slightly flexed as a demonstration. You'll have some people who are more extreme than this, who feel really strong in a rounded position, that's their best position to maintain throughout the lift based on their strengths and weaknesses. You'll find people who are stronger in a more extended position. So the thing that keeps constant is that the back doesn't change as the weight moves off the floor. If you pause it here, it's in the same position as it is here. It's in the same position as it is locked out, with shoulders are slightly forward, and that feels really, really good for me. So in terms of bracing, what I find that the third B, so as my hips are high here at the highest position, I find that personally that's the best place for me to take a breath whilst it's a compromise, but being able, when you're doing it for reps especially, that you're going to be able to take a better breath when this angle here is opened up a little bit. So with your hips high, so that position there where there's a little bit of a gap, that's going to be the best place while I'm attached to the bar to take the breath. And then as I go down to this position, if I try and breathe here, then the amount of breath that I can take in is going to be compromised, and therefore the brace that potential is limited somewhat. And yeah, so what I focus on is in the brace that works for me. Some people report differences in terms of bracing technique. Some people like to breathe in and allow the diaphragm to move up. Some people some people prefer to take a breath in with the ribs down. Personally, I prefer keeping the rib, taking a breath into the tummy and imagine I'm trying to keep the ribs down, which in turn prevents me from my ribs flaring up. If I allow my ribs to flare up, I go into a more posterior tilt at the pelvis, which doesn't feel too good. So I like focus on thinking about keeping as I take my breath and go to brace, I like thinking about keeping my ribs down towards my pelvis and keeping this position. I find that I can maintain and contribute to the second B, which is maintaining that same position throughout the lift. We want to lift this bar from the floor to lock out in a straight line as close to midfoot as possible, whilst maintaining the same torso angle throughout. and then obviously I add the brace on top of this. Deadlift fundamentals, straps. I would recommend everybody get used to conventional straps and build the skill on this, and then you'll find that learning figure of eights on top of that when the time is right, or for the context that you need for the upcoming comp, then that's going to be great. And you find that learning deadlift with straps. So what we're going to do with deadlift with straps is put them on like this, and then feed underneath. I like to just wrap once and grab the strap like that. And what you're doing is gripping the strap and stopping the strap slipping, and the strap grips the bar. So you're going to be able to grip significantly more. Your grip's not going to be the limiting factor when you're using straps. So grip the strap, stop it slipping. So this is a great place to start for the straps. Everything can be built from this. So you can practice using your full grip and just use it to develop your full grip. You can go into the fingertip grip and practice using the straps, so you're getting a lower lockout and a better start position. You can go over to figure of eights, and if you learn figure of eights after learning how to use a conventional strap, then it's really easy to learn. Whereas learning it the other way around can be a bit more problematic, and sometimes you'll get comps that ban figure of eights, and then you do want to use your strap. So I would definitely recommend learning the conventional straps to start off with. And then another note: people who are scared of using straps because they're frightened of losing the grip strength. So as long as you're working, say, a farmer's or Hercules hold, or some kind of farmer's stimulus each week, or some kind of grip stimulus, then your grip's going to be great. It may actually help you focus on developing your farmers a little bit more. So don't be worried about using straps. Some of the best people I know in terms of grip strength, in terms of farmers, use straps for the majority of their deadlifts. So don't be afraid. Common errors that I see in deadlifting. So one of the main errors is the hip shooting up. So we can imagine this. You can imagine people addressing the bar, and as they go to initiate the pull, the hip shoot up, or the back rounds, the shoulders come over the bar. So why does this happen? Hips rising before the shoulders. So this is very, very common. People going to initiate the pull like this, and then seeing the hips shoot up first. So the biggest reason why this happens is because the hips are, you're trying to start with the hips in too low of a position. So if the hips are shooting up to a position as you initiate the pull, actually treat this as a message that the object is trying to give to your body. It's putting you in a more efficient position to produce force with your hips a little bit higher. But the problem is, so if you're doing a competition and your hips are shooting up, then it's a message that your strongest, that your hips are getting sent to your strongest position. Which, if your shoulders are a little bit more in front of the bar than what you'd like them to be, and your hips are starting a bit higher than you'd like them to be, and your back's a little bit more rounded than you'd like them to be, that's something that you should be working on improving the muscular balance in stuff in terms of your off season. But if you looking to embrace and maximize how strong you are right now, actually setting up closer to that position that you're being sent in is going to be a lot more efficient, and if you start in that position rather than get sent to that position as you initiate the pull, you are going to be more likely to be able to maintain that perfectly straight bar path. And the danger is, and this is why a lot of injuries occur deadlifting from doing this, are people trying to set up with this hips low position that's not ideal to produce force, because there's no tension at very little tension at the posterior chain. that when they initiate the pull, basically in this position here, there's no tension here whatsoever because of this. And this is the problem with people who focus on setting up with the back straight first. So you look at this position here, and to the untrained eye, people might say, "Oh yeah, that looks really good. Good deadlift start position, good technique, bars over midfoot, backs nice and straight or whatever." But there's zero tension here. There's zero tension here whatsoever. It's almost at a right angle. So what happens is as you initiate the pull, your hips go to that point where they feel tension at the hamstrings. The problem is doing this. So not only if you actually start with those hips a little bit higher, what it's going to enable you to do, it's not necessarily saying you should be rounding your back. That's probably a little bit too far, because that's probably the position that we've gone to as the momentum's taken it that high. Probably go a little bit lower in terms of the start position and still feel a lot of tension at the hamstrings. But what this position is going to now allow you to do, because the hips are higher, the shin's ever so slightly more vertical, which in turn is going to allow the bar to start a little bit closer to the shin or midfoot and be able to still maintain that straight line. So what may seem to some people that they're a little bit scared of, oh well, my hips are higher, the back angle is means that my back's more exposed. A lot of people may actually find that, say, if you're getting, like, say, lower back discomfort symptoms from deadlifting start position, you may actually find that this alleviates, like, going to here, because of this thing of the bar starting closer to your center of mass, and therefore reducing the shear forces through your spine, even though it seems counterintuitive. Your hips go to that point where they feel tension at the hamstrings. The problem is doing this as you initiate the pull, is you're going from that point of no tension to finding the tension, and it's almost like it's almost going to gain momentum going into that position that's going to cause like a chain reaction, more likely to produce your back to round during the movement, which we definitely don't want. So simple. So that's what I just repeated about your hips shooting up during the pull. The problem is they'll go to the position where they'll go to the position which is stronger, which is that with, in this case, like with a slightly higher hip position. But then because it's moving under load, it gains momentum and can go past that point. So the hip can go to your sweet spot, but because your torso position is changing under load, it can gain momentum and go past that. And you can go with the hips too high and then back too rounded and way over the bar. Whereas actually finding like a sweet spot somewhere in the middle can help us have a lot more success in maintaining an optimal bar path and maintaining the same back angle throughout. The solution is actually just playing around and actually starting with the hips a little bit higher. And I know this is counterintuitive for a lot of people, because a lot of people are trying to start with the lower hips to actually protect the back, which is actually in turn, because of the stuff that I've explained, putting them in a position that's actually going to increase the injury risk, because they're setting up with no tension. So what we want to do is, setting up with no tension in a position that as soon as they initiate the pull, the bum shoots up really high, the shoulders get pushed over the bar further than what they would have been if you'd have set up with your hips slightly higher. And then arguably the most dangerous thing is that the bar path that you initiate just changes throughout the pull, and it's not straight, and it's just danger. Start with that, the hips a little bit higher at that point where there's almost like a bit of a bite at the hamstrings. As I'm setting up here to the bar, I can feel like my hamstrings are almost like a loaded spring, if you will. So this is going to mean that my hips are in a position that they're not going to get shot up, because they're already in that position of tension. So not only are you going to get the advantage of when you initiate the pull, you're going to be in a position where you don't get shot up. You've actually got like a little bit of tension in that bottom position. You're going to be able to use like a bit of stretch reflex to help you drive from the floor. So if you're struggling to imagine what I mean by creating a bite point with your hamstrings, then I would recommend doing controlled eccentric. So starting off your session with an empty bar or a stick, and then just focusing on finding a position where you can maintain your tripod foot, but as the bar comes down close to your body, almost like if the bar had a bit of paint on, a bit of white paint on, you're creating like a white paint all the way subtly down your thighs, all the way down your shins, ever so slightly. The hairs on your legs would go white. But what we're trying to do is on this eccentric is create hamstring tension as we go down, and then maintain it all the way down to the bottom position. So some of you may find this easy to do when you're, like, say, at the top portion, or when you just go below the knee, and then you might lose it just down at the bottom. But this could be the reason that why your start position is you're getting kicked out of position in your start position. Maybe you're somebody who enjoys doing, say, 15-inch deadlifts and above, but then you go below and you're getting kicked up and into the hip shooting up error. So this can be doing the slow eccentrics can be a really great way of gaining that skill of where you of finding that hamstring bite point throughout the lift. So from here, that's a much better position with a slightly higher hip than the point demonstrated before. So another advantage of this position, because I'm relying on more of a hip hinge, which is putting my hips in a more ideal position, it's actually bringing my knee further back behind the bar, which in turn is creating space for the bar to get closer to my center line or closer to midfoot. So actually it's creating a more efficient bar path for the bar to travel also. Deadlift error. So yeah, to repeat that, the starting with the hips a little bit higher, finding that bite point and your hamstrings can actually mean that the bar starts in a position closer to your center of mass, and therefore is more likely to be less painful in terms of shear forces through your lower spine, and you're going to be a lot more likely to be able to find that efficient bar path throughout. Deadlift error, bar nudging. Deadlift error, kicking the bar forward or letting the bar leap forward as you initiate the pull, which is common because you're basically setting up too close to the bar or not creating a sufficient hip hinge. So what you commonly see, people setting up this, and going, and going, and going. And you can see as the pull is initiated, the plates are moving forward. So what we want to do to fix this is either focus on the same distance away from the bar as you normally would, and really focus on creating a better hip hinge. So focusing on pushing those hips back and getting a start position more like this. And you can see that the bar path is immediately better. If you find that you're losing power, go into more of a hip hinge position like that, because you feel like you're initiating the pull more from the posterior chain and you're missing out on a little bit of leg drive, then what you can do is try setting up with the bar just a little bit further away. So if it's only subtle, like the first rep that I demonstrated, just setting up literally, half a centimetre further away. So instead of here, where I'm going, and there's that little nudge forward, if I set up here, so just giving myself a little bit more space, so when I drop my hips to drive through legs, I'm not risking nudging the bar forward. So from here, I go, and you can see instantly that path is a lot better, and that bar is now traveling in a straight line.